All right. Good afternoon. Like Tom said, my name's Jana Fuelberth. I'm the president and co-founder of Analytic.Li, and I have a confession to make. This is my first Cypress University. So I hear that there's people that have been here at all 8. So if you think about speaking in front of a group of strangers for the very first time, name it 300 of them, you get a little nervous. And so I'm thinking to myself, I'm prepping for this conversation. I'm like, okay, who can I call and talk to that's gonna make me feel better about this presentation of all these strangers, brokers, health insurance, this great topic. So I'm thinking friends, family, and I go, aha, Ben. You guys don't know Ben, but Ben is my older brother. He's 2 years older, and he's a health insurance broker. He was that broker. Then when ACA came out, he read the entire legislation. He knew every I and every T. And he used to think that fun on a Saturday afternoon was going to Circuit City and playing Stump the Sales Guy. So I was like, if there's anybody that's gonna make me feel better about sitting down and talking to a bunch of employers and consultants and health insurance professionals, it's gonna be Ben. So of course, my brother welcomes me with open arms. He says, sit down, dear Jana, little sister, let's talk about it. He starts talking to me about the top trends of health insurance, and I'm like, can I have some wine? So now I'm feeling your pain. And he makes me feel so much better about the types of conversations that workforce analytics and the types of opportunities that we can help create for not only employers, but the people that help employers. So I'm feeling really good. I'm packing up my bag, like I'm walking out the door, and all of a sudden he says, hey Jana, it's gonna go great. Like the first day of sophomore year. You guys don't know sophomore year. The reason that I took those steps so carefully is because my first day of sophomore year, I tripped into the wrong class, showed up to the wrong teacher, and ended up spilling my lunch down my shirt and had my fly down by the end of the day. It was a tough start to sophomore year. So this is my long way of saying, please be kind to the newbie, and we are so thankful to be here today. And I think Tom and Marcia were already really kind to me, because right after me is the cocktail hour. Thanks, guys. So let's talk about talent. And talent's really become trendy. Headlines, blog posts, you name it. Talking about talent has become a really hot topic. But one thing that I'm noticing about this group is y'all are problem solvers. You guys like to get on the court, discuss, have great conversations. So that's why I'm really excited to talk to you about Analytic.Li, because we're not gonna just talk about trendy topics. I'd like to talk about the real problem and how we can help employers and help you help employers together. So the reason that we wanna talk about talent is because there's some macroeconomic forces that are impacting our ability as employers. So first and foremost, it's no shock that we are existing as employers in a record low 3.8% unemployment rate. And while there are record lows from an unemployment perspective, we're actually having record highs of jobs. So it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that there's more demand for work and less people to fill that work. And to layer on top of this, let me talk about global competition when you are a family leisure store in Indianapolis, Indiana. So employers are faced with rapid rates of global competition, because I was working with a customer yesterday. They sell pools and hot tubs and barbecues and billiards tables and the little pop shots that you see at your favorite local watering hole. And I was talking to them about what's going on in their business. And I said, who's your #1 competitor? And they said, Amazon. And I was like, no way. Amazon doesn't ship billiards tables. And they said, yeah, they do it for free. So basically what's happening is there's more demand for jobs, there's more people, less people looking for jobs, there's more global competition. So what's happening is employers are required to be more efficient and more effective than ever before, and the war on talent is ever increasing. I won't name names, but there's a manufacturer as you drive south on I-65, I'm from Indianapolis, Indiana, that has this huge sign out front, "We don't drug test. Apply here." That's another topic, maybe for next year if we get invited back. But we kind of laugh, we chuckle, because inevitably what we're thinking is, wow, why would anyone want to do that? It's because the war on talent is that thick. So what's really important, attracting and retaining talent. Predominantly, my company works with highly operationally intensive businesses, hourly workers, folks that have tons of hourly workers, manufacturing services, distribution, healthcare. You know, the number one thing that they're pointing to when it comes to employee retention, it's not increased wages, it's health insurance benefits. So the reality is, in my day-to-day life, I feel this tug of war between profits and people. And that businesses are almost forced to make decisions about their people and in the best interests of their people, or about their overall business outcomes and strategy. But that would be a really bad end to a presentation. So I'm here to say that there's hope, and it's data. But actually, I'm here to say there's hope, and it's workforce analytics, but the whole 6-syllable thing didn't really have that much of an impact. So let's talk a little bit about what workforce analytics is. And I promise, one of my biggest pet peeves about going to a conference is when there's someone that comes up and talks about something, a big and it's fluffy, and you get really excited about it, and you walk away with all of these great ideas, but really no way to take action about it. So we're going to really talk and drill in on how workforce analytics can not only drive your employers that you work with or your personal success in business. So workforce analytics. It's actually the practice of combining a lot of different data sets together. Data sets that we in the HR community are really familiar with. Payroll, timekeeping, benefits, workers' comp claims, performance scores, but then also incorporating business data sets like operations, finance, budget, productivity, and being able to look at that holistically. Now, workforce analytics is a space that's growing. So by 2025, there's going to be $660 million of spending in the United States alone. And workforce analytics is actually projected to be $1.87 billion worth of spending globally. So that's why we created Analytic.Li, and that's why we're here to chat more about workforce analytics today. So analytics is the fastest time to value workforce analytics company. We help employers of all sizes, but we mostly focus on mid-market employers make better decisions about how people drive their business outcomes. But before I dive into some examples and some practical applications of workforce analytics, I want to take a step back and talk about our history and how we got into workforce analytics. So back in 2008, I was part of an organization called Beyond Payroll. Yes, I sold payroll. So especially as brokers, I know that you've probably got 4 emails in your inbox from a payroll rep trying to set up a meeting to sit down to talk about ways that you guys can partner together. So I get it. Payroll is really the glue that holds employer and HR data sets together, but it is a really commoditized business. But what's interesting about what we did at Beyond Payroll is we actually sold payroll with a little bit of a twist, because we had access to all the different platforms, whether it was ADP or Paychex, Ceridian or Kronos. We could really sell what was in the best interest of our employers. So you would think with 13 platforms under our belt, and 13 different offerings, that we'd be able to say yes a lot. But what we ended up having to do is say no quite a bit. And it wasn't because the payroll platforms and the HR platforms weren't well built. It was because our customers were actually asking for business-wide data. And what I mean by business-wide data really didn't feel like rocket science. So in our payroll company, we decided that we would start helping our employers pull data together. So I'll give you an example. We worked with a number of UPS franchises, and the question that the CFO was always asking me is, when I add a different type of benefit, how does that decrease or increase my turnover? When I think about how productive my stores are, how profitable are they? Can you pull data from my point of sale system to see which store's most successful or the least profitable? So to us, it didn't feel like big questions, tough questions to ask, and we wanted to solve it for our customers. So we started doing that. So what happened is we made customers really, really happy, but I made my operations team really, really sad, because we were doing it in a set of Excel files. So we had an idea. Imagine if we could build a solution that could pull data sets together, like point of sale or operations, health insurance, productivity, budget, labor, together in a really pragmatic way that could serve our customers. So I had the closest thing to a Steve Jobs moment, no black turtleneck up here, and we started putting pen to paper to think about how could we reimagine the way that employers solve their workforce analytics problems. So fast forward to today, and we've launched Analytic.Li, and we're super excited to talk about our story. So let me do the thing that I promised that I would do, which is kind of the 4 practical considerations as you're thinking about a workforce analytics strategy for yourself or for your customers. And these are the top 4 lessons that we've learned along the way as well. So lesson number 1. Focus on, and I love this because this has been a theme in the first 2 conversations this afternoon. Think outcomes first, data second. And I'll admit, when I'm listening to our product development teams and our engineering teams, our customer experience teams, we fall in this trap as an analytics company. Many times we think, what can we solve with the data that we have access to? As opposed to saying, what do we really need to solve? So it's really having that discipline. So I'll flip to this next slide, and I'll tell you a little story about how we've approached an outcomes-oriented product. So as opposed to thinking, what data do I have access to, so therefore what can I solve, we take the approach of saying, kind of like a takeout menu. Here are the things that you can solve with workforce analytics. What's most important to you? So when we work with organizations like Goodwill, they say, for us, it's number 2, number 4 with a side of 7. So you take this super complex, kind of fluffy, how does this work for me issue, and we start peeling back the onion and saying, what do you want to order? Side note, my business partner, Corey, Tom and Marcia know him. We always stop at Arby's on the way driving from Indianapolis to Wisconsin, and we walk to the counter, and he always looks over to me, and he's like, 2, 4, and a side of 7, because he knows I love the outcomes. So let's talk a little bit about outcomes. So outcomes can be as easy as things like deploying labor more efficiently. Now, deploying labor more efficiently might be easy to say, but really it can have a huge financial impact. Let me talk to you about a Nissan parts manufacturer that we work with in Tennessee. We help them deploy labor more efficiently by combining data from their budget, finance, payroll, and timekeeping systems, and we will save them a projected $6 million in labor expense this year. And that's just by the constant alerts and notifications that we provide to their teams on how to keep them on their productivity budgets. I mentioned Goodwill. So Goodwill came to us, and we had to do a little myth busting for them because they had this preconceived notion, I'm sure no one in the audience has this either, that their millennials weren't as committed as the rest of their team. So they were really concerned about preventing and diagnosing turnover in their millennial population because they were experiencing some of it. Well, what ended up happening with Goodwill is we realized that it really wasn't a millennial problem, it was a manager problem. So the stores and locations that were experiencing that high level of turnover and thus impacting the core mission of Goodwill was actually not because of the age group of the people that worked there, it was the skill set of the manager. The manager was kind of like the path of destruction along the way. And finally, aligning benefits to drive business outcomes. So I have picked up a thing or two from my big brother, Ben. I do understand the value of having the right health insurance and the right approach to total rewards based on population. Again, we see it day in and day out at Analytic.Li when employers are fighting for the employees to stay. And in many cases, they're not increasing the hourly wage. They're thinking about their total reward strategy and how that impacts their turnover. So Tom did say that I could have one shameless plug. And Analytic.Li has a sister company. So when you think about diagnosing and preventing turnover, there's a tax credit. So let's forget about the logo on the screen, and let's talk about the Work Opportunity Tax Credit. And if you don't know about this tax credit, I would write that down, because 85% of employers, and I would bargain to say that 95, if not 100% of mid-market employers likely don't know about the Work Opportunity Tax Credit. And for a group that we work with 500 employees, we'll find them $250,000 of tax credits that they've never used before. Basically, what the Work Opportunity Tax Credit does is it incentivizes employers to hire statistically disadvantaged people. So I know that workforce analytics can kind of be a big, broad, strategic topic, but I would really encourage you to check out Higher Credit or simply the Work Opportunity Tax Credit, because it's definitely an underutilized tool for groups like the employers that we're all serving today. So when we think about taking an outcomes-based approach, it doesn't have to be broadly across all employers. We can really kind of tailor and focus the value that we're bringing to customers based on vertical. So I've mentioned a couple of stories about manufacturing. So in a manufacturing setting, because we're able to pull data from their ERP, their finance, their budget, and their payroll systems, we're able to quantify the value of the productivity or missed productivity. In a healthcare setting, we're able to help hospitals like Mount Washington Pediatric Hospital, one of the Johns Hopkins groups, help manage the number of patients that they see today and avoid clinician burnout. So there's lots of different ways that workforce analytics can become relevant to an organization. So first of all, we took a very outcomes-focused approach to our workforce analytics project. And second, take a holistic view of your data. Now, I admit I'm not in the health insurance space every single day, but unlike at Cypress Benefits, I hear a lot of this conversation about increases, an increase of spend year over year. So there is an area that I know a lot about, and that's software spending. Every year, organizations' software spending increases by 10%, because it's not just CIOs buying software any longer. Bottom line is there's more data out there for us to harvest. So when you take a holistic view of the data, integration is key, and effortless integration. So here comes our vision of being able to integrate simply, without IT's help, the data sets that really drive businesses, whether it's timekeeping, payroll, HR, production, CRM, or this really highly advanced platform called Excel. It's amazing the publicly traded, large conglomerate organizations that we work with that still do their budgeting on Excel. It's kind of that Instagram versus reality thing. All right, so we'll kind of pick up the pace here. Number 3, provide the insight to the people that can drive the change the most. I have a strongly held belief that the current approach to analytics, especially workforce analytics, is flawed. We spend a lot of time catering to the C-suite, and I advocate that we spend less time catering to the C-suite. How do you think we were able to drive $6 million of change in a manufacturing setting? It definitely wasn't because we were sending 16,000 alerts to the CEO about labor expense. We were communicating with all 800 lines, the production managers, the shift leads, the line floor leads, to really drive those changes. So when approaching workforce analytics, maybe put the CEO on the last to receive workforce analytics. So in getting the right people involved, this also means thinking about new ways to approach analytics. So if you talk to Analytic.Li, you'll probably get the sense that we kind of push the dashboards out of the way. I don't know about you guys, but I've been dashboarded out. We like to focus on alerts, because alerts mean action. What is the change that I need to make? Because I'm really not looking for a new pretty dashboard or graph to flip through during my morning coffee. Number 4, considering staff, resourcing, and budget. So there's a lot of different ways that you can solve for workforce analytics, but let me give you some ideas on what you're going to need to shop for, or what the employers you serve are going to need to shop for. When it comes to successfully pulling off a workforce analytics installation and driving those great outcomes, you're going to need a lot of people. A lot of developers that honestly, after selling payroll door to door 4 years ago, I had no clue what an ETL engineer was. But boy, oh boy, do I have a bunch on staff now. So when it comes to workforce analytics, I mean, here are the types of people that it takes. And in a mid-market organization, for the types of groups that we're serving, these folks don't have people on staff. Data analysts, software engineers. So that's why Analytic.Li takes a really pragmatic approach to leveraging our team, our infrastructure, and then our investments. So our internal team is actually made up a whole bunch of HR nerds and finance geeks and software dorks. But the great thing about that is that your employers and the customers that you're serving and you as an employer don't need to have those folks on staff. All right. So let me show you a couple of stories of how workforce analytics can impact an organization. And I'm going to spend the next 3 to 4 minutes talking about sauerkraut and sales. So we're in the process of working with the largest sauerkraut manufacturer in the world. That is a thing. And they're really focused on making sure that when they spend $1 on labor, they're getting a ton of sauerkraut, well, maybe not a whole ton, but the dollars that they're spending on labor results in the amount of sauerkraut that they need. So again, we're pulling data, like I said, from HR and payroll and budget and finance and operations systems. So we're going to focus on the outcome of getting ROI on human capital investment. So you'll notice the place that we start is actually reporting on the output metrics, so how labor expense is trending favorably for the CEO. But you'll notice I'm reporting to the CEO what happened last week, but I'm already on the court with the plant manager managing to this week. And things are looking so-so for the plant manager, so I know that I need to help him get on the court to manage this. And so the great thing about Analytic.Li is with these alerts, based on the thresholds that we set up with our organizations, is we can deliver great news and we can deliver bad news. And in this case, we're on track, we're on budget. Now let's talk about sales. If there's one thing that you can do to drive the top line of the income statement, it's having a sales team that's staffed and trained. And in many cases, figuring out when and why those sales reps might be leaving and kind of plugging the gaps and plugging the holes with the right types of programs makes a lot of sense. So in this scenario, let's say I am experiencing a high churn of sales reps and I'm seeing a slump in my sales. So thanks to the power of workforce analytics, I'm able to drill really quickly to the sales team, which in this case is business development, and let's peek at the top right corner, which is turnover. So someone's told me inside the organization we're having a lot of sales reps leave. And sometimes it's myth busting, right? But in this case, it's the truth. We are seeing a lot of people leave. So now we want to know why. So in this case, I can drill in and see that, and this is not an eye test, but within 7 to 12 months of being on the job, most of my sales reps are leaving, and they're leaving for growth opportunities. So in this case, I can go back to my HR team and think about, are we paying enough? Are we incentivizing the right way? Or have we written the job description to make sure that it aligns with what the real overall job entails? Because at Analytic.Li, what we focus on is kind of removing the noise of the right time and thinking through all of the right people, making sense of all the right items so that we can get our arms around the data and really focus on what matters. And that's Analytic.Li. Now, I said I was the newbie, right? And I asked you to be kind, because now I'm about to say you can go have a drink. But what I would ask is, since this is our first time, and since this is a new group, we would love for you to stop by our booth. We are an admitted bunch of data nerds, and we know that there's problems outside of our typical workforce analytics offering that employers and brokers and employer consultants are dealing with. So we'd love to, as we say, nerd out with you throughout the rest of the conference. Thanks.